So you are in the market for a new Android phone, and even though you've got a set budget, you can't decide which phone to buy because of the sheer number of great options out there. Now, for those of you who keep up with all the latest releases, I'm sure it will be an easy decision. But if you're someone who doesn't follow everything going on in the Android smartphone space, the number of options available at each price segment could be a bit overwhelming. So in order to help you make an informed choice, in this video, we'll be talking about a couple of things you should keep in mind while purchasing a new Android phone. Hey guys, this is Abhijit from Guiding Tech, and let's get right to it, shall we? To kick things off, let's first talk about the processor. Now, there are four main brands of processor being used in Android phones these days. There's Qualcomm's Snapdragon series, Huawei's HiSilicon Kirin series, Samsung's Exynos series, and then there's MediaTek. Each of these four brands make a variety of different processors ranging from basic budget chips like the Snapdragon 430 or the Exynos 7884B all the way up to the flagship chips like the Snapdragon 855 or the Kirin 990. Now, depending on your use case, you can choose a processor that fits your bill. So for example, if you're just looking for a phone to do basic things like making calls or using WhatsApp, then you'd be pretty much satisfied with a chip like the Snapdragon 430. But if you want to play demanding games on your phone, you'll have to stick with one of the flagships. While selecting a high-end processor, you should also check its architecture, process, core performances, low power cores, battery efficiency, and the clock speed. As of now, the Qualcomm Snapdragon 855 Plus is one of the best processors available in the market, and you get it on a number of flagship devices like the OnePlus 7T. In case you don't want to go for a budget chip and don't want to spend the big bucks for the flagship, you can also opt for mid-range chips like Snapdragon 712 or the Exynos 9611. Now that we've got the processor out of the way, let's take a look at storage and RAM requirements. First, we'll focus on the RAM, which is a bit easier to understand. Do you want your phone to open apps instantly, keep a number of apps running in the background, and easily handle multitasking? If your answer is yes, then you need at least 6 gigs of RAM on your phone. You can also choose a device with 8 gigs of RAM in case you want to add gaming to that list of things. But anything more than that is definitely a bit of overkill. For basic functionality on a budget device, 4 gigs of RAM would be ideal. Anything less than that and you might start facing problems with multitasking. When it comes to storage, you'll need to check whether you're getting UFS or eMMC storage on the phone. UFS is the new standard these days and it delivers significantly faster read and write speeds when compared to eMMC. And most mid-range phones these days offer at least UFS 2.1 storage, with flagship devices offering UFS 3.0 storage. And as far as the storage space is concerned, then that completely depends on the amount of data you want to store on your phone. If you can do without downloading tons of movies or music on your device, then 32 gigs or 64 gigs of storage should be quite sufficient. But if you wish to install a ton of large games on your phone and also use it as your primary media device, then you might want to get one with 128 GB or more. Next up, there's the display, and there are two main varieties you can choose from: LCD or AMOLED. And here the distinction is quite clear. If you want a premium experience, then you should go with an AMOLED display as it looks a lot more rich and colorful with deep blacks and amazing viewing angles. AMOLED screens are more commonly found on high-end devices, but the technology is slowly making its way to a few mid-range and budget phones. For instance, Samsung now offers a number of mid-range devices with an AMOLED display, like the M30s, which look far better than the LCD screens available in the devices in the same price segment. And it's not just the quality that's different. AMOLED displays also result in better battery life because they don't use a backlit like an LCD display. Each pixel on an AMOLED panel is lit individually, so if you use a black wallpaper, then the phone won't use as much battery to display the wallpaper as it would do with an LCD. Since we are on the topic of battery life, there's another major factor that you should consider while getting a new phone. Because what good is a phone if it can't even last you one whole day, right? Phone batteries have come a long way in the last couple of years, and a vast majority of devices these days pack in at least 3500 mAh, which should be good enough to last you a day. Anything more is always an added benefit, but anything less than 3000 mAh and you might start facing issues getting your phone to last a full day. And it's not just the battery capacity that matters, you should also pay attention to the charging speed supported by the device and whether it comes with a fast charger in the box or not. In the budget segment, support for a 15-watt fast charging is a must-have, while that number bumps up to at least 18 watts for mid-range devices. When it comes to flagships, anything above 20 watts is a good figure. But if you want blazing fast charging speeds, then there are a handful of smartphones that support charging speeds of 30 watts or more. Next up, let's talk about the cameras. Now, I'm not sure if you're aware, but phone cameras have significantly improved in quality in the last couple of years. The number of budget and mid-range phones boasting a 48 megapixel or even 64 megapixel primary shooters. But does the megapixel count really matter? Well, the answer is both yes and no. With a high megapixel count, you'll be able to capture large size photos that you can use for prints. But that doesn't necessarily mean that phones with bigger megapixel count will deliver better photos. Take Google's Pixel 3 series for an example. It's widely accepted as the best smartphone in the camera department, and it just packs in a single 12.2 megapixel sensor, while most of its competitors pack in triple or quad camera modules. So instead of focusing on the megapixel count, you'd be better off checking out the aperture and pixel size. For these metrics, there's an easy rule of thumb you can use. A good camera module will have a small aperture value and a large pixel size. Smaller the aperture value, the better it is, and vice versa for pixel size. If you're confused between the two same spec options, but one has an aperture of f1.7 and the other offers f2.0, then you should go with the first. And if you plan on capturing video on your phone, then you should also check if the camera modules include support for optical or electronic image stabilization. Though manufacturers often skip adding these features in the budget phones, you'll still find a couple of devices in the mid-range segment that offer at least EIS on the primary lens. Now that we are done with all the hardware features, let's focus on the software. Google just rolled out Android 10 earlier this year, and the first wave of devices running the software is just hitting the market. So if the device you're looking at runs Android 10, then you're pretty much good to go. If you're looking to purchase a slightly older device though, make sure you get one that runs Android 9 Pie out of the box. But it's not just the version of Android that's important. You see, most manufacturers these days ship a skinned version of Android on their smartphones, like MIUI on Xiaomi devices, Oxygen OS on OnePlus. These skinned versions offer a number of additional features which you may or may not use, so you'll have to consider that before going ahead with the purchase. I personally prefer Oxygen OS over everything else as it adds only essential features while still retaining a near-stock Android look and feel. But a number of users swear by MIUI or other skins as well. So if it's possible, ask around and try out the software experience before making a purchase. Let's round things off by talking about Widevine LOL support, which has fast become a must-have feature on most Android devices over the last year. And you'll definitely need it if you're going to be streaming HD content from apps like Netflix on your phone. This is essentially a security measure implemented by streaming services to prevent piracy, and if your phone doesn't have Widevine L1 support, you'll only be able to stream video at 480p. Now, this isn't something you should worry about if you're purchasing a device that was launched within the last couple of months, but if you're going for a phone that is over a year old, that's definitely worth checking out before making a purchase. Well, that rounds it off for this video. Make sure you check all these parameters before buying your new phone. And if we missed any important parameter, please do add your thoughts in the comments to help everyone else watching this video. And do hit the like button if you liked our efforts behind this video. This is Abhijit signing off, and I'll see you guys in the next one.